Alcatraz is easy to mistake for a finished story, a prison on a rock, a closed federal nightmare, a tourist image floating in the bay. But that reading is too small, because Alcatraz was never only a prison. It was a military answer, then a disciplinary machine, then a federal symbol, then a reclaimed political stage. The island did not keep the same meaning, it kept the same usefulness. And that is what makes it worth examining. Just over a mile from San Francisco, Alcatraz appears self-contained. The water seems to explain everything. Isolation, control, no easy way out. But the island's history was not created by geography alone. It was created by repeated decisions about what kind of threat mattered most and what kind of institution should be built to contain it. The name reaches back before the prison mythology. In 1775, the Spanish explorer Juan Manuel de Ayala mapped the bay and named one of its islands Alcatrazes. The meaning is still debated, but it is usually linked to seabirds. That matters because it reminds us how far the island's modern reputation drifted from its earlier identity. It was not born as a symbol of punishment. It became one through use. The decisive turn came in 1850, when a presidential order reserved Alcatraz for public purposes. San Francisco was expanding under gold rush pressure. The bay had become too important to leave exposed. The US Army treated the island as part of a defensive system guarding the entrance to the bay. Together with Fort Point and Lime Point, Alcatraz formed a triangle of defense. More than 100 cannons were planned there. The island became one of the most heavily fortified military sites on the West Coast. In 1854, it also became the site of the first operational lighthouse on the Pacific coast. So from the beginning, Alcatraz was doing two things at once: warning and defending, guiding and controlling. But military technology changes. Strategic needs change. Places built for one function can become awkward relics unless someone finds a second use for them. On Alcatraz, that second use arrived early. By the late 1850s, military prisoners were already being held on the island. During the Civil War era, its prison function expanded. The guns never fired in battle, but the prison logic endured. That is the pattern that would define Alcatraz for more than a century. When one mission weakened, confinement became the island's next justification. By 1907, Alcatraz officially ceased being a fortress and became the Pacific Branch US military prison. Then, from 1909 into 1911, military prisoners helped build the new prison structure completed in 1912. The massive concrete cell house visitors recognized today came out of that military prison phase, not the later federal one alone. That matters, because the famous building was already there before Alcatraz became the prison most people mean when they say the name. In 1933, Alcatraz was transferred to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. In 1934, it began its short but defining era as a federal penitentiary. This was the prison system's prison, a place designed to hold the men other institutions could not manage: escape risks, high-profile criminals, and prisoners who had become administrative problems elsewhere. Minimum privileges, maximum discipline, strategic intimidation. This is where the island entered American legend. The government hardened the site for a new kind of war. Not coastal defense, but domestic criminal containment. Tougher bars, guard towers, strict routines, repeated inmate counts, and around all of it, the cold water of the bay. Famous inmates helped shape the myth, but celebrity was not the real engine. The real engine was the idea that Alcatraz existed for prisoners who had exceeded the handling capacity of ordinary confinement. And yet, even that logic had limits. Alcatraz was powerful as an image, but difficult as an institution. Everything had to be brought in by boat. Infrastructure deteriorated under harsh island conditions. Salt air and exposure were not cinematic details. They were operating costs. By 1963, the federal prison closed. The legend remained, but the practical case for the institution did not. Then came the event that prison-centered tellings often treat as an epilogue, when it may be closer to a redefinition. In 1969, Native activists under the banner Indians of All Tribes began the occupation of Alcatraz. The occupation lasted 19 months. It became a landmark in the modern native rights movement. A site long associated with state control was reread as contested land, public witness, and indigenous claim. The island did not stop being historical when the prison closed. It entered another argument about who America had been built for. That changes how the whole place should be read. If you look at Alcatraz only as a prison, you miss the deeper continuity. The continuity is not punishment alone. It is strategic reuse. A military stronghold becomes a military prison. A military prison becomes a federal maximum security symbol. A closed federal symbol becomes a stage for political reclamation. Even the 1962 escape mystery fits the pattern. Authorities never conclusively recovered the three principal escapees. Officially, they were treated as missing and presumed drowned. The mystery helped preserve the prison's aura, even as the institution itself was nearing its end. So what did Alcatraz have to survive to become what it is now? Not just criminals, not just time. It had to survive obsolescence. It had to survive the fading of coastal artillery, the limits of military imprisonment, the cost and corrosion of the federal prison model. And then it had to survive, in public memory, being flattened into a single story. Today, Alcatraz sits in the bay as if it had always meant exactly what people think it means. But that is the illusion. The prison was real. The fear was real. The mythology was real. But the prison story was only one chapter inside a larger civic machine. And the island's true dossier is about how a place built to guard a harbour kept being rebuilt to guard something else. Subscribe for the next dossier.